Hi everyone, how are you?
Hi, Debbie. Debbie, on behalf of IWLA, I'm absolutely delighted that you're able to join us this evening. For those listening who don't know me, my name is Aisling Cannon. I'm a member of the committee, the steerco and a director of IWLA. And with us here this evening, we have Deborah Somorin, who's going to give us an insight into how we can find resilience in ourselves in ways we had never known possible if we can dig deep from experiences we have already had. Debbie and I have been discussing over the last couple of days how we're all living through extraordinary times. But Debbie figures that if we can actually talk to ourselves and look back on experiences we've had, we can actually find resilience in ourselves to cope with things that we didn't even perceive in our wildest dreams or nightmares that we'd be able to cope with. Before I introduce Debbie, I'm going to say she is even younger than you can possibly imagine. She is only 26 years of age and she has accomplished more than most of us will in our lifetimes. She's going to give us her story and her examples of how she has gone from being somebody who perhaps felt that her options in life were limited from as young an age as 13 to a girl who became a young mum at 15 and who has now gone on to qualify as an accountant, to found her own charity and to be on Forbes list of 30 under 30. However, I think it's absolutely necessary that I give a personal slant, which is that she's also one of the kindest, most empathic people you could meet. I met Debbie through my son. Our kids are in school together, and I arrived into a room on my own, a bit shy, and not really very sure of myself. And she took me
Join the meeting.
Looked after me. She's absolutely fantastic, and I'm absolutely delighted that she's here to talk to us today. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Deborah, who will just sparkle and give you great hope for the future and some stories and resilience to help build your day tomorrow. Thank you so much, Debbie. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Aisling. I really appreciate such a kind and lovely intro. So I suppose what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a bit of a talk now first, and then what I'm going to do is I will take some questions at the end, and I hope that's okay. So if anyone can't hear me, just let me know. It's no problem at all. Sorry, just going to move the camera here. That's no problem at all if you can't hear me, just speak louder, just let me know in the chat box, and hopefully Ashley will keep an eye on it and let me know if someone says if they can't hear me. So very simply, there we go, that should be perfect now. So very simply, when I was 10, I moved to Ireland after the breakup of my parents' marriage. I was born in England. I was born in Westminster, and your parents tell you all these really silly stories about to try and make you feel special. So I was apparently born in the same hospital all the royal babies are born, and I was the first black baby to be born there. It's definitely not true. I had a pretty normal life. My dad's a pastor, and my mom, education was really important to her. So they say about your values and things are kind of formed in your early years. So I think maybe even subconsciously, all of her going on about school and having to walk 3 hours to school each way because she grew up in such a disadvantaged area. Maybe subconsciously that went, I absorbed that, and that's what kept me going, and what I kept in the back of my own mind when I was going through all of the horrible things that happened many years later. So normal, mommy, daddy, my siblings, everything. And when I was 10, my parents split up, and my mom, I suppose my dad had all of the power. My mom didn't have an education. She couldn't stand on her own 2 feet, but she really wanted to. She's as stubborn as I am, and just really believes that she could do anything.
Join the meeting.
And she decided to take the kids and move here. 4 kids, 10 and under, and my little brother was literally a newborn, but she just couldn't take it anymore. She just really wanted to find something different. She really wanted to give us kind of the best chance in life, and it's absolutely devastating that she's not here today. She had mental health issues that she was going through since she was a teenager, and it was really just depression, and when I was younger, she would just lock herself in her room for weeks, and whenever my parents would have a fight, one of my youngest memories is going through, that you have like a family phone book with all of like your friends, but maybe you used to, I don't know, you obviously don't do that anymore, we don't, but you have all of your family friends and things that you can kind of call, and all the parents keep the phone numbers, and one of my youngest memories is like literally opening that and ringing up all the people in the phone book to say, like, my mommy won't come out of her room, will you come and help me. And that's because I hadn't seen her for weeks. And my dad, they were obviously just going through their own stuff. And I always say this, I don't have any anger in my own heart towards my parents for anything that happened then, because I just think that they were going through their own stuff then, and they didn't have the mental capacity to look after themselves properly, never mind 4 kids, and we were just collateral damage. And I think obviously becoming an adult has helped me. Obviously I didn't think that at the time. I wasn't a teenager going, oh yeah, I understand you're going through a tough time. I was a teenager being selfish, as all teenagers are. I was always a daddy's girl. I've always been a daddy's girl. My dad's just always understood me a bit better. And me and my mom had always been at loggerheads, so she'd been physically abusive before we moved here. But I suppose to the extent that it's in the Bible, so my dad's a pastor, so I grew up in a very religious family, and it's in the Bible that if your kid is bold, that you should hit them. And I suppose my dad would step in whenever it went too far. Whenever he was there, he would be able to say, that's too much now, leave her alone. And when when he wasn't there anymore, when we moved here, there was nobody to step in and say, that's enough now, so I got taken into care. Listen, it's an absolutely terrifying experience for any child, to just have your life completely uprooted in that way, and everything gone, and you're in a new family, and all of a sudden strangers are in charge of making every decision about what you eat, what you wear, where you go, where you live, if you can live there, for how long you can live there, just everything. And that's its own experience. I think that's enough for just being in care is a traumatizing experience enough for any child, never mind the things that they went through before they got into care. So I was in care, but I suppose the main thing for me at that time was that I was safe. And that was why I suppose I never felt sorry for myself in that situation. I never even saw it as like, I should feel sorry for myself. I just saw it as, okay, this bad thing is happening, but I still need to try and survive this. I don't know. Anyways, I just didn't see it the way that I do now. And when I was 14, I got moved into this place that I call it Disneyland Care Home. So I don't know if anyone's ever seen Tracy Beaker, but that's like the closest example I can give to what residential care homes are like. And I'd been in homeless hostels and stuff in the preceding years. Literally a homeless hostel I was in right before I moved into that one, this Disneyland Care Home that I'm going to talk about in a minute. You literally I got locked into my room, because the staff that were there were so scared of the other residents getting at me, because of it's not a risk assessment. They don't put you somewhere where like all the nice kids and quiet kids are. You just get all put in the same place. So the kids who have hypersexuality and who are doing drugs and doing heroin and stabbing people and all of that stuff, that's going on all in the same place with the kid who's going to school and trying to just survive it. So they used to do things like that to keep me safe. I need to, knock on the door if I needed to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night or anything like that. It was literally that dangerous. And I think it's security is one of the things that you need to feel to do anything in life, to be going to school, to just kind of progress and grow, and not being able to feel safe in the place that you're sleeping at night. Never, it's one thing to feel like there's danger outside the door of your house. It's another thing to feel like there's danger on the other side of your bedroom door. And especially I was only 14 when I lived there. So after that I moved into a care home called Dune Oak. It's actually run by a really lovely woman from Sutton called Kieran Marjoram. And I remember when I went to see it, I literally said it was like Disneyland. And there was nothing special about this care home. It was a normal house in a normal housing estate. But for a really long time, I'd really craved that. I hadn't had that, going home, having a dinner on the table, getting to go to school like a normal kid, getting to give out to my parents because they won't let me stay out at night. I really craved all of those things that my friends were going through, that were getting to experience that I wasn't at that same time. And that's the thing, I think when we think about kids going through these things, we always forget that they're normal teenagers like everyone. We just assume that this homeless child should have better resilience than this child who grows up in the leafy suburbs of South Dublin somewhere, but realistically they're all kids and they're all going through the same things, the normal same things. It's just additional stuff layered on top of all of the things that any child would have to deal with. So I was in that care home, and there was two of the girls that lived there. We were like sisters. I remember us all sitting around the table one day talking about who we thought would first get pregnant. And I was obviously last on the list because I was the youngest. They were like very much so like my big sisters. And I was only 14 at the time. And I found out that I was actually pregnant a few weeks after that. And when you're in care, obviously there's you know, it's a resourcing thing, you know, it's numbers and beds. It's a person in a bed. And at the time, you know, you couldn't really put people who had babies in the same care home as people who didn't have babies. So I was then going to have to leave my Disneyland care home that I finally felt settled in, because those were just the rules of being in care. And Kira said, not a hope. Kira said, every solicitor had to call for me from here tomorrow is to stop you taking that kid away from this care home. I will do it. If I have to stand in front of that door to prevent you taking her, I will. And she converted the whole purpose of her care home into a mother and baby home. Went above and beyond, paid for me to go to Grinds in the Institute when I was pregnant, so I could do my leaving cert so I could do my junior cert straight after I had my son Liam. And she just went above and beyond for me in a way that she didn't need to, because at the end of the day, statistically, I was never going to achieve anything with my life. Statistically, I was a single mom who was raised in care, who was, you know, who'd come from a broken home. Like nothing was stacked in my favor. So her, you know, taking money out of her own pocket to do those things for me, and her going above and beyond like that, it's nothing but compassion and empathy. And, you know, just kind of circling back to what Aisling said at the moment, you know, I would be a horrible, horrible person if I didn't show that kindness that people had showed me to other people now. You know, it's definitely something that sits with me, you know. So she converted it into a mother and baby home. I stayed, I did my junior cert, I did my leaving cert, and I got into my first choice, which was accounting and finance in DCU. And I got in through the access program because I went to this really disadvantaged school. In between doing my leaving cert and everything, my mum unfortunately passed away from suicide. And, you know, it's something that I didn't really deal with, to be completely honest with you, at that time, because I was just saying, Liam needs me to get my exams, Liam needs me to get into college, so I don't have the time to have a breakdown right now, you know. So I just kept going and kept going, and you're just in autopilot for a few years there. I got into college. It was tough because the next challenge I kind of had, this is the thing, you know, you would think that being in care and being in the system, you're nearly kind of better off in some way, you have some sort of advantage, or that they would, if they see a kid who is going through something like that they would do everything possible to try and make sure that they can go to college, that they can progress. And that wasn't the experience that I had. You know, the experience I had was, I want to go to college, and people going, yeah, but you probably couldn't cope because you've been through too much, and this, that, and the other. Even my teacher in school, my math teacher, pulled out of one of my classes when I was in 5th year, saying you should probably think about doing 4th year, because you're probably not going to do your leaving cert because you have a kid. So that was what the grown-ups around me were saying to me. But the people in my care home were saying, how dare them say that? You can do whatever you want if you put your mind to it. They were giving me that strength that I needed at that time. And going on from that, anyways, I I managed to put together a lobbying team at 17. I started putting it together when I was about 16, 17. I literally looked up like any advocacy groups that were out there for young people in care. So EPIC, One Family, all of these people, to write letters on my behalf to what is now TUSLA, to say that, to essentially beg them to support me while I was in university, so that I could stand on my own 2 feet when I transitioned out of the care system. And what that meant was, when I turned 18, I had to move out. Those are just the rules of living in care. So right now, and actually, well, when the homeless crisis was going on, I feel like it's getting better now, thankfully, with randomly with COVID-19. But anyways, that's another story for another day. But you know, when everything's going on with the homeless crisis, a huge part of the homeless crisis is young people coming out of state care. And a lot of my friends are literally turning 18 and being dropped off at a homeless hostel because there's nowhere for them to go. And I suppose I saw the writing on the wall very early on. I saw that happened to a few people at the time when I was in care. So that's why I put that lobbying team together, because I knew that once I turned 18, I was on my own. So I needed to have that support in terms of accommodation and childcare so I could go to university. So I got that, I put it together. I fought really hard. They initially said no, but I'm not an easy person to say no to. So we wrote lots of letters and we got it in the end. I'm still living in the home I moved out into in Clare Hall with Liam. It was great to have that security and stability all through being in college. I did my degree in DCU, I got my 2-1, and I didn't get any job offers. I applied for consulting, which was stupid because at the time it was like the recession. So like consulting was very, very hard to get in any of the firms. The idea was to go for audit, do your 3 years, prove yourself, and then try and go for consulting. But I was like, I'm just going to go for consulting because I think I'm amazing, because that's what happens when you're a student, and you think you're all okay. And I went for it, and I was really disappointed because I didn't get any job offers. And I said, well, what do I want to do? So I always wanted to do a master's. I always had it in my head. I obviously just didn't have any money to pay for it. I'm one of these people that I just like, sometimes I just start these things and just hope for the best, you know, and that's literally what I did with this master's. I started this master's just so I looked at for all of the scholarship options. Even Focus Ireland had helped me look for all the scholarships that were available out there, and there was no scholarships available for my master's in DCU. And so I was so disappointed. And so anyways, I started it, and it was probably just about the week where they're going, right, if you don't pay your fees, you're not allowed to use Moodle or anything anymore. You know, you're going to have to get your fees sorted if you want to stay on this course. And then I get an email from a woman called Claire Whelan in DCU saying that CRH have randomly decided to start doing master's scholarships for 3 access students in DCU, if I wanted to apply for it. And I was like, yes please. And it was literally I couldn't believe my luck, you know. I luckily got one of those scholarships. It didn't only look after fees, it also looked after living expenses, which was just so generous. Anyway, so did my master's, got through, got my 2-1, and I got my place in. I did my job offers, got a few offers from a few Big 4 firms this time, and my three job offers when I was graduating, and it was just incredible. It was really surreal. I picked PwC because one of my best friends works there, and he's just been able to really grow into himself, grow into the best that he could be, but like in a way that made him more comfortable with who he was. I don't know how to explain that, but there's really lovely people in there that have an ability to just make you feel so comfortable in who you are in a way that you didn't feel when you necessarily walked in there. And to give you an example of that, you know, today I had my afro out, and you know, I never wore my hair natural from when I was from about 10, 11. I stopped wearing my hair out. I always wore like extensions to try and look like my white friends, honestly, because I didn't like myself. I didn't like that I was Black. I didn't like that I was different. All I wanted was to be the same as everybody else. And I went into I didn't even realize how bad it was. I would have probably, and I think my friends would have as well in college, you know, put me down as a confident person. I didn't realize how much it affected me. And then I went into PwC, and Fergal, our managing partner, does these incredible town halls where he just goes, and it's in every speech, no matter what he's doing. I don't care if you're purple, brown, if you what gender you like, what football team you support, anything. He's like, anyone that wants to be successful in this firm, I want you to know that you can be successful. That's genuinely the type of firm that we're building here. I'm definitely paraphrasing, but that's the essence of it, you know. And he does it consistently in every single talk that he does. He always reinforces that message, and it's very in line with who we are. And it just helped me come out of myself a lot more once I went into PwC. So that's why, anyways, that was what motivated me to pick PwC. Something just sparked something in me that this was somewhere I could grow, and somewhere I could grow into myself as an individual and as a professional and the professional that I wanted to be. Yeah, it's definitely lived up to that in terms of Fergal's town halls. It just really inspired me, and it's inspired me to become more comfortable in who I am, and to understand that what I look like doesn't affect my ability to be successful. And that's really lovely. That was something I didn't know that I felt about myself. That was an insecurity that I didn't realize. But anyway, so that's why I do afros, and I'm just stepping into being a Black professional woman a bit more. Sorry.
Just,
okay?
You're back.
I'm going to take that opportunity just to say that unfortunately we only have 5 minutes left. So what I'm going to propose is that we hear a bit more maybe about what happened next once you got into PwC, and maybe a bit about Empower the Family, or whatever. I'm really enjoying this, so whatever you want to talk about. But then I certainly feel like I need to debrief. I didn't even live through this, I'm only hearing it, but like it's just so much that I'd love to, yeah, just join up back in again and chat about it some more. So we can just log in through the same link again and just see if people have comments, if that works for you.
Absolutely. Perfect. So yeah, so went into PwC then. It was a really lovely experience. Focus Ireland came back into my life again. Obviously the homeless crisis was going on, and they asked me if I would go and do a talk in the Cox of all places, actually, share my story. I said, not a hope. I said nobody knows I was poor. I was like, nobody, you know, I'm not going to offer that information up to people. And I suppose they said, you know, it was a breakfast event. It was a few people that were going to be there. There was a lot going on with the homeless crisis, and personally for me, in terms of reading the news and just being really frustrated with the way it was being portrayed and the way people were talking about homeless people and homeless kids, because that's, for me, it's that homeless kids thing, you know, regardless of whatever the parents do, you can be sitting there making your assumptions about a million and one things about the parents, spending money on this, that and the other, but the children have done absolutely nothing to put themselves in that situation. So that was really frustrating for me. So I said, listen, I'll go and do it, you know. So I did it, and they raised like 10 grand that morning. And you'd have to be a very selfish person to walk away from something like that and say, oh yeah, I'm just going to like keep it to myself because I'm scared what people will think about me. To think that you could have that much of an impact in changing people's perceptions on such a sad problem. Yeah, so that's how I kept doing that. And again, PwC were amazing. They were so supportive of me sharing my story and of me coming out with my story. And yeah, which was a very scary thing, because I thought everyone was going to be like, oh my god, you're poor, you know. I don't know. I don't know what, obviously nobody was going to say that. That's not even a rational thought. But you know, they were incredible. They were so amazing. They have been so amazing. And so I was doing this for a couple months for Focus Ireland, and randomly get an email on a Monday morning in PwC, actually, the Late Late Show wants to talk to you. And I said, what's going on? And did that, and I just thought it was really ridiculous, because I haven't done anything like at that stage, you know. I just done what I needed to survive for my child. So that weekend I wrote down on my phone this idea for Empower the Family, posted it on social media, started a petition, because I knew people would be coming to my social media. I was never going to become a social media influencer or anything like that, going to start selling skinny teas or anything like that. But, you know, at least it was for something good, some people coming to my page and clicking on a petition to create something that helped other people do exactly what I'd done, and make that journey to university, to doing better for yourself easier in any way. And that's how I started Empower the Family. So we're working with Dublin City Council. It's been such a journey in the last 2 years, but we're working with Dublin City Council now. We're an approved housing body, and we have a site in Ballymun which we'll hopefully acquire by the end of this year when the world opens back up, and we are planning a 30-bed student development there. So it'll be Ireland's first social student housing development, which is amazing. So it means there'll be a creche there and shared study spaces, and it's purpose built exactly for what those young people need to be able to successfully get through university. It's in Ballymun as well, which is great because it's right beside DCU, who have the longest access program in the country, and obviously where I went, so I'm a little bit biased, but you know, it will be open to all of the universities. So that's me, and that's that.
Could I ask you, Deborah, just as people are getting questions together and things, over the last, 10, 15 years of your life, you have learned things about yourself you didn't know were possible. Have you any sort of overall resilience lessons or learnings that you could share with us? While you're sitting talking to a group of people who, for the most part, are professional adults, I would imagine, but who are facing restrictions in terms of their choices, their lives, anxieties about their futures, anxieties about their loved ones. Have you resilience sharings that you could share with us who are listening today?
Yeah, I think that the big thing for me is whenever I'm going through whatever I'm facing, I suppose I like looking at things like a journey. So when I like making a plan for my life. So previously, my journey was to get my accounting qualification, get my training, finish my training contract in PwC. And so whenever different things come up, it's just kind of bumps in the road. That's how I look at it. And I literally see my whole life as, even like everything that happened to me from when I was 10, I just see it as like I was always supposed to get my training contract, and those were little bumps that kind of bumps in the road. And so I try and draw strength from those experiences to say, okay, I got through that bump, I can definitely get through this bump, if that makes sense. So to give an example, say someone's not being very nice to me, someone's being a little bit fun in an email, and I'm just going, oh, for God's sake, run away. And you can get very worked up about these things, get very wrapped up in them, and just go. But I just get like, in comparison to the other things I've been through, this is nothing. So I can handle this. I don't know, there's no need to kind of crumble and go away and cry about it. I will do that as well, but there's no need for me to kind of and that to be the only response, if that makes sense. I do give myself a break to cry. That's something I've learned to do, and it's okay to get sad about it, but I don't need to go crying to that person. That person doesn't need to know that they've affected me or upset me. So I suppose that's the way I look at different things I'm going through in my own life, is trying to draw strength from any of those bad experiences that I've had and saying, I got through that, I can get through this. Because sometimes we can just get no matter what we're going through, it can just seem like the biggest thing in the world sometimes, especially now with everyone being so anxious with everything going on in the world. So yeah, just having perspective and putting into perspective other things I've gone through. And you put it really well when I was chatting with you earlier. I've survived all my failures. I can survive this, I think was something similar that you said earlier. It's that kind of takeaway of just trying, and we all have that stuff, it's not even that like I'm saying I can get through, if I could get through homelessness, we all have our stuff, we all have things. That's something I've learned. We all have things that we've gone through in our life that have made us who we are, that difficult periods in our life that we didn't think that we would have been able to get through, but we did. And I suppose drawing from that strength of how you got through those different things that you thought you would never be able to get through, that's how I try and approach it. So that would be my advice, is trying to think back to any periods in your life that you had a difficult time, and just try and draw strength from that whenever you're struggling.
Super, thank you. And I'm struck by a number of the stories you've told us have key individuals who've stuck out for you as, really having your back and being a support to you. Are you a believer in key individuals rather than a whole team behind you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially the last couple of years, obviously running a charity now, so it's really funny, like I suppose in terms of my strategy for building a team, I knew that governance and having a really great board of directors was key to that, and that's how we've been able to get any of the support that we've been able to get to date. So I'm getting to, and I don't even know if any of them are on this call, but you know, they laugh at this, but I do have to boss all of the guys around. It's like the finance director of Google and just incredible people that work at all of these really senior companies, and I'm like, okay, but you need to get this done. And I had to find a way to I don't know, they're just really lovely. They're individuals that are I picked individuals that are guiding me on that path, if that makes sense, and who are giving me a chance to just supporting me on that journey to trying to figure out how I lead a company, you know. And that's really lovely. That every single person on my board, I feel is a supporter. And I can go to them for advice if I'm not sure how to handle one thing or handle another thing. And obviously we make decisions together, and I really respect everyone on my board's opinion. So having key individuals as opposed to a team, you know, and being like, oh, I don't even know how to describe that, because I probably contradicted myself in a weird way, but I suppose I don't see my board as a team. I see them as individuals who collectively come together to achieve our vision and mission, and who take time out of their own life for free to help us for no reason, because they don't know me from Adam. I was nobody. Yes, now I'm, you know, it's great being on the Forbes 30 under 30 list, but when I rocked up to these people initially, I was nobody. I was someone who was still doing my training contract, like hundreds of other people. So yeah, having those individuals support me and guide me on my career journey has been a huge resource for me. Yeah.
Fantastic. And one last question for me, and I'm sure there's a lot from others. If you're having a tough time, you're having a tough hour or a tough day, what kind of tricks do you have up your sleeve that you can sort of play yourself as a deck of cards to help you out of that tough time?
Ooh, love. My whole house smells like lavender at the moment.
Yeah.
So I'm doing the essential oils. It's actually so funny because it's actually Deirdre O'Kane's sister, Grania, who got me into them, and she's guiding me through them and doing different classes and things to introduce me into the best oils. But I've started off with peppermint and lavender. And so lavender I find is amazing. I'll just put that on my top. Or meditation. I love meditation as well, but you have to be in a very, I feel, well, okay, I need to be in a very calm place to be able to meditate. So tapping has been a really lovely thing for me as well. It's a technique, a stress release technique. I can send you guys a link. There's a class that she does every week. My career coach recommended it for me. It's so lovely. It's kind of like CBT. It's one of those emerging areas in terms of psychology. And you literally just kind of tap away at your whatever you're feeling and say it at the same time. And there's different kind of points you do it like around your head and just different things like that. So yeah, it's I find having that kind of toolbox, that coping toolbox of things I can draw on really helps. So yeah, the lavender and the tapping and the meditation are pretty much my coping kit. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing. I'm sure there's a huge body of questions and people who'd like to ask questions. Maeve, are you able to help us moderate the questions there?
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you. And thank you, Debbie.
Oh. Yeah, off you go, Rosemary.
Yeah, hi Debbie, how are you? Rosemary here from the committee. A lot of your story resonates with me. I was a young mum myself at 16, and you know, kind of like yourself, not a very straightforward path to college. And I'm just kind of wondering, just from, you know, like our stories are not identical. Nobody's stories are identical, obviously, but I definitely got some of the sense of, you know, don't reach too high. You know, that you know, there's, you know, I'm loving the fact that your charity is providing you know, accommodation to allow people to, you know, to go to college, as opposed to just, well, here's a roof over your head kind of thing, you know. And my sense always was that, you know, I was never looking for a handout. I was, you know, I wouldn't have minded, you know, a helping hand up, you know. So like, how do you feel about the idea of, kind of being that person that gets to give the helping hand up? And, I mean, like, I think it's really interesting how you're using your experiences to formulate how you're going to change the world. You're changing the world that you want to see for people who are having the same experiences coming up behind you. And I'm really loving that, so fair play to you. I'm not sure if there's a question there, but I'm just kind of, cheering you on, and delighted to see that people who have, we'll say the same challenges you and I had going to college, will have, greater resources, as a result of what you're doing. So fair play to you. I mean, childcare was a massive issue for me. I went to UCD, and to get into the creche in UCD, you had to book the childcare space nearly 2 years in advance, at least a year in advance. So I actually only got my child into the creche there on the 3rd year. So that's useless. That's of no use. And how are you to go to college if you can't have the child in childcare? So I actually picked classes dependent on the timetable, not dependent on what I wanted, because of what I could afford to go to class wise. So it was like, well, I'm doing Japanese history now. Why? Because not of a burning desire to know all about Japanese history, but because it fitted the timetable and it saved me, an hour's childcare. But like, what's your sense regarding the kind of the idea of a helping hand out versus a helping hand up, and kind of empowering people to to make those changes in their own world, and what do you think about that?
So I think that, thank you so much for the very kind words. First of all, I love your second name because it's actually my son's second name as well.
Oh, that's so lovely. Oh, thank you. Brilliant. Oh.
I suppose for me, the way that I look at it, I very much so fell into all of this. I wrote the idea, put it on my phone, and was like, I'm very much so... I was 24 years old going around asking people for millions of euros so I could go pursue some vision that I had, that I was like, that's, and the way that I look at it is, every bad thing in my life happened to me for a reason. And I'm a spiritual person, obviously with my dad being a pastor and growing up in the church, but I genuinely believe that every bad thing happened to me for this reason, to be able to help people in the way that I'm doing now. Because if I'd had the normal upbringing that I'd, continued on the path when I was 10, I wouldn't understand the issues as well as I do now. I wouldn't understand how hard and the barriers that are there for people. And that's what I'm doing here, is I understand how hard it is for people, but I understand that not everyone understands that because they haven't gone through that. We have a lot of assumptions around supports that are there for people, and that that was actually one thing that was really frustrating me kind of couple months before I did the late, was just whenever I did talks and different things, I might get an email from some people saying, because we hadn't set the referendum yet, not to make this political, we hadn't set the referendum yet, but the debate was going on, the grassroots campaign was going on. And so I'd get kind of comments or emails from people kind of saying, essentially saying, like, trying to make the point that any other single parent that didn't do what I'd done was kind of lazy, and that everyone should be able to do what I'd done. And I was like, no, I that's not the type of narrative or story I want people to be taking away from this at all. I want people to understand that it is really hard for people in these disadvantaged communities to claw their way out of it. And you do need that compassion, you do need that support from different people along the way. If Kira hadn't gone and turned her care home into a mother and baby home, got me grinds, supported me so I could stay in college, Lord knows where I would have ended up. So I see it in that way, and I think that's something I always try and tell people whenever I do diversity and inclusion talks. I very much do it from a perspective of I look at inclusion of like every single person as opposed to labels, specifically because I do believe that we all have our stuff, and every single person is different in their own way. So trying to encourage people to be compassionate to people, and not make assumptions that they have that support necessarily is something that I try and promote whenever I do those talks, because you do never know what the person next to you is going through. So yeah, just trying to be compassionate in every interaction is just what I try to do.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, because that gives us a kind of a background of, you know, this assumption that, well, oh, there's this support, there's that support, you know, why aren't people able to, you know, access these supports and so on. And I'm now in student development in the Law Society in my work, so, you know, I'm seeing the people who got all the way there, but, you know, there are so many people who, you know, who drop off at different stages. And I think that, you know, there's a lack of visibility of the necessary supports that need to be in place every step of the way. And, you know, those people you're talking about, those key people in your story, as well as the actual kind of practical supports, you know, and how we can kind of build those, you know. So thanks very much for sharing that. Thank you.
There's just a good question in the chat here, an important question from Andrew about how people can support Empower the Family.
Yeah, so there's a number of different ways. One is particularly, you can obviously make a donation if you want, but that's really not the main thing that we're doing right now, because we have a route to funding, because we're an approved housing body. So I think that the main way right now is we're looking for mentors to put on a list. Now, we're obviously not due to open until September 2023, so it's very much so a list of people, and we're still kind of figuring out how we'll engage with them in the lead up to 2023 to make sure that they're still kind of involved, but creating that mentor list, because it is so powerful to have someone that you can ring that is doing the thing that you're trying to do, that's, you know, broken into the professional world that seems so scary and so far away for you, that you can ring up or go for coffee with once every few months or something. That's everything. Having those positive influences in my life, and so many of my friends don't have that. I was the only person in my school to go to university. That is insane. You know, I was the one who stumbled in my juniors with my brand new baby. So trying to and it wasn't out of like that people didn't have the ability or anything. It was that a lot of my friends just had it in their head that DCU was something we walked past. I went to school down in DCU, was something we walked past. It wasn't somewhere for us, which is really sad. So having people there that can be a positive voice is really beneficial. So I would say the mentoring and trying to help us with the mentoring side of things, and be a mentor for one of our residents. It won't just be single moms. We're also going to be looking after young people coming out of state care. So where possible, you know, we'll try and pair people up based on different characteristics that they have. Is actually ideally what I would do, is try to match people based on personality and personality fit. So yeah, just try and make sure it works. I had incredible people in my life, but you know, if they weren't, if they were similar to me in some way when I was a kid, then they got it, if that makes sense. So I'm so stubborn. So you know, if you tell me to go left and don't explain to me why, I'm going to go right. It's just who I am. So the people who got me would take the time to explain things to me, and I was like, okay, cool, no problem, I'll do that to the best of my abilities now. So just mentors that can communicate in that way with our young people will be very powerful.
Great. There's Kira's commenting in the chat here, saying judges sign off on aftercare plans, and the more lawyers that are aware of Empower the Family, the better. Providing a safety net for those in care as they navigate the world post being in care is so important.
Yeah,
committee.
It's
say that focusing on education at every step of children in care is so important, because as you'll be aware, and thanks for sharing your story, that care ends at age 18, and the aftercare plan is signed off on by a judge. But for children who do show an interest in education, it would be great if judges, first of all, were aware of the organisation, Empower the Family, and that there was a level of almost anticipation or hope that children who do show a level of interest in third level education, that it's a part and parcel of an aftercare plan. You know, that it's not a complete exception to the rule, because while we have free education, I mean, it's expensive to go there, and everybody needs a safety net, really, at that age. You know, your future path is kind of determined very often at that age. So the safety net of accommodation or childcare really would help people just to stay in education, or even to to have the confidence to approach it and thinking that it could be for them, as opposed to ruling it out completely. So I really do think your organisation completely ticks that box and has kind of shone a spotlight on something that probably prohibits a lot of people even considering third level education as an option for them. So yeah, I was just in comments there saying the more lawyers and social workers and everybody aware of the organisation, the better, so that it can be brought into that courtroom forum where aftercare plans are discussed, and that it just becomes something that that is factored in.
Absolutely. And it's kind of, I suppose it's part of our outreach plan when we come down to it, is looking at how we identify those people, how we reach young kids. We don't want, like, we're not looking at outreach when they've already decided to go to college. You know, those are the kids that it will be easy to get in. We're looking at outreach for the kids who are thinking, oh, maybe this might be a thing, but like, is it not for me? You know, we're trying to find a way to help young people in that way. So it's definitely part of our long-term plan in terms of outreach, is working with the right organizations to make sure they're aware of our service and how to access our service, and how we can support them with young people from secondary school, from like 4th year of secondary school. So with my school, DCU and their access program would have come in from 4th, 5th year, and they already run programs with schools in North Dublin with 4th year students, and they'll go in and actually run a whole year program, and they do this whole awards program in the Helix for them, which is just the cutest thing. And they just think it's so amazing getting to go to Helix, and they just think it's so fancy, and it's just the things we take for granted anyway. Sorry. So yes, absolutely, connecting with the right organizations to make sure that we can get that outreach piece right is something that's very important to us. Absolutely. Thank you.
Did anybody else have a comment or a question? There's just messages in the chat. Deborah thanking you, and yeah, saying about the mentorship. You know, saying that people in this group, you know, would hopefully, if there's kids who want to be lawyers, that we'd be able to help and have a discussion with them and give a bit of the encouragement or the push at the time that's needed. Yeah,
and there would be a lot of people like that, because it's what you'll find is young people, like, I don't know if there's anyone in this call who has similar background, and if you don't want to share, you don't have to, but I definitely find that there's a lot of people who come through everything that they go through, come through disadvantage, and then they just have like a huge sense of justice or purpose or fairness of some sort. So you'll definitely, I think, for me anyways, I was going to do law if I wasn't an accountant. So I think you'll find a lot of our young people will probably want to be lawyers.
Great.
Well, Deborah, thank you so much for sharing with us, Maeve. Maeve, thank you for hosting us and looking after us all. Debbie, thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm conscious and I'm very humbled that you've taken the time to do this. I'm sure it's very difficult to relive and to talk about each time you have to tell your story, but I'm very grateful to you for taking the time to do that with us today in the midst of this world pandemic, when we have anxieties all around. But I have to say, I'm taking huge comfort from your resilience and from your strength, and it's giving me hope. So I hope it has touched everybody else in a similar way. Thank you so much. Best wishes to yourself and to Liam.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda.
Goodbye. Thank you.